To be well. Let's talk about this and really everything else going on as well with Labour MP Siobhain McDonagh. She's a member of the Treasury Select Committee, so we'll no doubt have great fun talking to the Chancellor in weeks to come after that autumn statement to find out his thoughts and indeed the Prime Minister's thoughts on what they're going to outline for us. Good morning to you, Siobhain.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. The autumn statement being pushed back, I'm sure part of the reason is not wanting Halloween horror headlines from next Monday. But there was that concern that that statement had to come before 3rd of November when the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee meets again to decide interest rates and how terrifying those would be. Since Rishi Sunak has taken over, a lot of the numbers have gone in the right direction. Wholesale gas prices down, interest rates not looking like they're rising so high. Things have calmed down in the markets, the currency markets as well. What do you think that's going to do for the autumn statement in terms of room for manoeuvre for the government?
I think thank God things have calmed down, Julia, because they were pretty dreadful. We were hours and days away from some of our pension funds absolutely collapsing, but the hangover for us as taxpayers continues because the amount of money that had to be spent in order to secure that didn't happen. So the numbers are going in the right direction, but there is then still a huge cavern that has to be crossed in terms of how we pay for borrowing. Do we increase taxes or do we cut spending? And that's why, your previous discussion with your guest about the windfall tax on the gas producers is just so ridiculous, because it is far better that they're paid for by a windfall tax than they're paid for the average British taxpayer.
The trouble is, an awful lot of that $9.5 billion isn't made in the British market. It's not, Shell, I don't think Shell are headquartered here. How are we going to gain access to that money? We can't just say, we, the British government, we've decided to tax your profits in Japan or in, Zimbabwe. We're not in a position to do that.
It's not beyond the wit of the Treasury to introduce a windfall tax. They've done it before successfully, and so
you can only do it on the producers in this country.
Any money that we get helps to fill that gap between what we spend and the money we raise. So however many billions that is, it strikes me as being a step in the right direction.
OK, well, we shall see what happens there. In terms of some of the other issues that came up at Prime Minister's Question Time yesterday and will come forward in the coming weeks and in the autumn statement, pensions triple lock. If Labour were in charge right now and doing that autumn statement, would pensioners see their payments go up in line with inflation around 10%?
That, I believe, is to be Labour Party policy, yes.
So they would stick to that, even though many people are concerning about sort of intergenerational unfairness. A quarter of pensioners are worth more than £1 million. They're largely homeowners. Many young people struggling far more, not seeing their wages going up by the same amount. Big question marks about whether benefits will go up by that amount. Why should pensioners uniquely get that extra help?
Many pensioners are not wealthy. As you make in your point, there are increasing numbers, and speaking for myself personally, not speaking for the Labour Party, I do believe that we have to tackle that, and we have to look at how pensions are taxed and how we're taxed on our homes, because, for young people, buying a home, having a decent pension, having the aspirations that we had at their ages seems like something impossible, and you can't carry on piling that misery on them.
And yet we do carry on piling that misery on them, because we've got basically very little house building, and we're seeing NIMBY action from Tory MPs and from Labour MPs and others whenever anyone actually tries to build some houses, but also on fracking. Lots of welcoming yesterday for what appeared to be, and then was confirmed by Number 10, a basic return to the moratorium on fracking. Why on earth, when we're in the middle of an energy crisis, largely driven by the price of gas, would we not be fracking for the shale gas underneath our feet?
I imagine because of people's concern about the environmental impact and the earth tremors that can be caused.
We're talking about the equivalent of a bus going by in a neighbouring street.
Britain is a far smaller country than America, where most of these sites are in very isolated areas. And as you say, I just think the government doesn't believe they could get it through anywhere.
Well, the thing is, it should be up to local people, shouldn't it? I mean, why not? Why not with local people being, given half-price energy bills or being paid a lump sum in return for putting up with the difficulties, the trucks going by and the noise, etc.
I mean, that's the way we're going to have to go on all sorts of planning issues. In France, if you have a nuclear power station built near your home, you'll get your local taxes paid for the next 5 years, or there'll be other incentives. And clearly, we're going to have to look at that.
No, absolutely, we should look at that. I mean, no problem at all. That extra cost for us, if there's an extra benefit, extra cost to local people, but an extra benefit for the rest of us. But we cannot tackle our energy crisis if we're not going to actually use the resources that we've got under our feet, can we?
But we do need, yes, you're absolutely right. We do need to use the benefits we have, and that includes more investment in wind power, in solar power. This complete.
But they're not reliable, and you can't power industry on solar power. You can't power most cars on solar. You need gas.
But you also need to take advantage of what you've got. And we're nowhere near taking advantage of the most wind power that we've actually got.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when the wind doesn't blow, we are going to need the backup. Let's also talk about another big story in the news. One of the senior Home Office officials, a clandestine channel threat commander for Border Force down in Mahoney, said yesterday, it's still the best job title in the country, although it doesn't appear he's doing a very good job of living up to that job title, because he's admitted that the country is now overwhelmed by channel migrant crossings. It's a record number, over 30,000 already this year, and that 10,000 of them are Albanian men. Indeed, between 1% and 2% of the entire Albanian male population has made its way by channel migrant boats to this country. What on earth would Labour do about it themselves if they were in power?
Well, if you carry on to read what Mr O'Mahony has said, is what those men do is they come to Britain for a year, they work on the black economy, and then they take their money home. It seems to me the only way you're going to stop that is actually by having ID cards. The pull factor to this country is if you can get here, you can disappear. It's harder than it was. But it's still not as hard as it would be in France or Germany.
You think they wouldn't get fake ID cards? Any employer could, and landlord. I think landlords are now required, aren't they, to only rent out to people who are already. Yeah, if you're an employer, you're not allowed to give someone a job who's not legally allowed to work here. For goodness' sake.
There are plenty of people who do, Julia.
Yeah, but ID cards isn't going to solve that, then, is it?
Well, it is.
You've just made my point for me.
People are much more traceable. They can be found.
We know where they are. They're all sitting in asylum hotels.
Julia, there is a reason why they're coming, and they're coming because they can do it and get away with it.
And how would we stop them getting away with it if people are already ignoring the rules in terms of ID?
Oh, I think ID cards would make a great contribution to that.
They have ID cards in most of Europe. Yeah, but they still have plenty of illegal migrants.
There is a reason why they're coming here, and we are processing fewer asylum claims every week, every month. We're leaving people in hotels all across the country because actually the system of asylum in this country has broken down. Cases are not being processed and people are being left ever longer, and nobody is being returned anywhere. So Suella Braverman can talk the big talk, can seem tough, but in reality what's going on is nothing is happening.
But it wouldn't be happening under Labour either. Most Labour MPs I speak to seem to think that actually we owe the rest of the world a sort of the right of entry into this country.
Actually, Julia, I mean, you can carry on with your rhetoric, but I was an assistant to John Reid when he was the Home Secretary. And I have to say, yes, we did get the backlog down. Yes, we did get the processes in place to remove people if they failed that system.
But the trouble is, we know that we accept far higher percentage of asylum seekers in this country. I mean, something 2 or 3 times the applicants than say Germany, France, and other countries. We're seen as a soft touch because we've got a whole bunch of lefty liberal lawyers who seem to think that anyone who claims, I've come from Albania, I've been persecuted, I should be allowed to stay.
Carry on believing it, Julia. Let the government get away with not having a system that works, of the whole place just collapsing around you. Carry on. but it won't actually tackle the problem that exists.
No one's tackling the problem that exists. That's the issue, isn't it? But how do ID cards aren't going to do it? A quick system of asylum claims won't deal with it.
Suella Braverman is getting away with it, talking big and doing very little.
But what would you do that would be different?
Well, I would certainly get on top of the backlog. What happened when Labour was in power, we did precisely that, to get claims that had been hanging around for years and years and years actually processed.
OK, well, I mean, again, big extra spending for the Home Office, I would guess then. Can I ask you about Qatar, finally? Also, I mean, James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, yesterday basically said, gay men, gay people who being gay as a man in Qatar is illegal. It's against the law. It's punishable by a prison sentence. They should respect the culture if they go to the World Cup. If you were a gay man, would you go to Qatar to watch the World Cup?
I would certainly not. And I think it's an absolute travesty that the World Cup is taking place in Qatar. It's completely mad, and it's due to the corruption that exists in professional football.
I said finally, but I'm going to add another question. Do you mind me asking, can you only see the top half of you and top half of me, are you wearing flat shoes or heeled shoes today?
I'm wearing heels.
You're wearing heels. So you're in girl mode. I'm wearing flat shoes, so I'm in boy mode, according to Eddie Izzard, who says that basically he wants to be called he, she or her, and says he is a woman on some days, a man on other days. He's had no surgery, no treatment of any sort whatsoever. He used to call himself a male transvestite. Now he claims he's a woman, standing for Sheffield Central. If there were women-only shortlists back again under Labour, which there aren't because you've got more women than men MPs, should Eddie Izzard be allowed on an all-women shortlist?
Eddie Izzard is entitled to think whatever he wants to about who he is, but he's clearly not a woman, and he clearly shouldn't be on an all-women shortlist.
Should he be going into women's toilets, as he's bragged about doing, scaring teenage girls?
No, I don't think so.
Would you mind having a word with your leader, Keir Starmer? He seems to think that any man who says he's a woman is a woman.
I don't think he would think a man should go into a woman's toilets.
But if a man thinks he's a woman and therefore Keir Starmer says then he can self-identify as a woman, then he's allowed to go into a woman's toilet, isn't he?
I think you're tying yourself in knots there, Julia.
No, it's your leader who's tying. It's great to hear from you that you're talking sane stuff, but I worry that your leader isn't. Do you not worry about what Keir Starmer thinks about women? That we're just a figment of men's imagination?
I think there has been a lot of discussion about this and reconsideration of how people approach it. It is a really difficult issue, I appreciate, but it's quite clear that men should not go into women's toilets.
All right. Siobhain McDonagh, really good to speak to you, Labour MP, member of the Treasury Select Committee.